In the 1980s, when the need to mechanization in the door started to be stronger. I mean, don't forget a little bit the historical context of Portugal. We were a fascist system for almost 50 years, and then in 74 we became a democracy. And of course, uh, my family used to have a lot of people to work because the wages were very small, very low. And then as things started to be more normal, of course there was much less people, and so we needed mechanization. And so we started to have these terraces in the 1980s, and we started with the system that you were seeing. So we had two, three, sometimes four rows of vines. As you can see here, there's a high salute, and so this becomes very difficult because you cannot. You see, with this is sorry. Uh, I would love to tell you differently, but we do need to use a little bit of herbicide. You can see some of the yellow things because it's impossible. Imagine how would you with a tondeuse try to cut all this grass. I mean, you would fall. It's going to be very difficult. So that's why we changed it from the system of the 2 and 3 rows to just one. And here, as you can see, you can use a machine and it's much easier. And so it's a much more ecological and sustainable way. At the same time, when you have more than one row, you have a huge difference of the quality between the outside and what would be an inside row. The reason is the amount of water, amount of sun. So the maturation is very uneven, and so for that reason too, one row system is much better than two. So uh, we're going to see another system that it's even better, which is the vertical planting. Because the problem, even when you have one row terrace like this one, which is better for the sustainability, but still the problem you have for vineyards in the door, this could be differently because not everywhere in the world you need the same plant density. But here we have in the terrace system, the main problem is the density of plantation is very low. So the Douro Valley before mechanization used to be 7,000 plants per hectare, and in terraces very difficult. Even when you do shorten the space between the vines, it's very difficult to have more than 3,500. So you're basically at less half of what used to be, which is not good because when you have a low fertility and very rocky soil like the Douro, the more plants you have, of course, up to a certain limit, the better colonization of the soil you'll have, and so you have healthier grapes because of that. So still, the other problem in the door is the how steep. Maybe we can a little bit around, and you see that other river, small river, that's the Távora, and there you can see how steep the hills are. And so sometimes you don't really have any other chance but to grow terraces, because to do a vertical planting it would be too much inclination, and so it's not feasible. Even today, since we are a World Heritage from UNESCO, you cannot plant a vineyard vertical if it will be more than 35%. In the past we would go up to 40, but now it's not possible. So another thing that is important, and we're going to walk to see a vertical planting, and in the meantime I'm going to show you a little bit what we have as soil in the door. Uh, this is a particularly difficult vineyard to plant. The rock, so basically, especially here around Pinhão, I think probably we could say that 95% of our soil is schist, nothing else. But the schist maybe I don't know how much. I mean, it's difficult on a cell phone to really capture colors, but you see how different these two schists are. And this one, when it's a little bit gray and almost bluish gray, this is hard as hell to break. So this vineyard here, that where we are, was really a lot of TNT to break this schist so we could plant something. And of course, it was so much rock that it's very low in organic matter. So it's very the look. We have vineyards that per hectare will normally have 3 tons in a good year. If something goes wrong, it will even be less than that. So a very difficult soil with a lot of rock, and of course, not only because of the fertility of the soil, but also it's very difficult to make anything like an intercept work here because you don't have really a flat platform. So the tractor is always bumping, and so it's very difficult to I think probably because the weather being changing and all that, we don't really know what to expect in the future. But probably the biggest challenge in the door right now is how can you not use herbicides when when you a lot of people have been investing money trying to explore different ways to manage the weeds, and it's really difficult. Another thing that's very difficult in the door is that, and you can see a little bit of that here, we don't have grass, you know. If you don't cut your weeds, the next year you're going to have small bushes. We have a lot of steva, a lot of rosemary, and so one of the problems in the door, besides the fighting for the small amount of water, is whenever you let the wild things grow, you're going to have bushes in the next year. So it's going to be very difficult. You really need to do something each year in order to control the weeds. What I was going to show it's right here. I lost track of. So I don't know. We had 15 minutes and maybe we spent 10 already. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
So we have to step up a little bit. Another thing, this is a little bit romantic and but I don't know. I think it's interesting and it's part of our cultural heritage. You see, we have these posts that are also made of schist. I think I hope you can see. So this comes from a place in the Douro Superior. So the Douro Valley is divided in 3 subregions. So pointing to that direction, which is Porto and the Atlantic, Baixo Corgo. Then we are here in Cima Corgo, and then you go to Douro Superior towards Spain. So imagine a parallel to the Portuguese north border line. That's more or less how the Douro runs. Sorry. And so going from Porto to Spain, you have more rain and more fertile soils in Baixo Corgo, drier and less fertile here, and the Douro Superior is almost a desert. A lot of vineyards in the Douro Superior, they don't need even to spray sulfur. I mean, there's no diseases. It's so dry that they can, in a lot of vintages, they don't have to treat their vineyards with anything. And that's where this black schist comes. That makes the most of the posts here in the door. So it's nothing to do with quality, but it's nice to have something like. At the end, it's very easy that the tractor, when it turns around, you hit on the schist post. So that's the reason. And here you can see what the vertical planting is. And so the part where it's really interesting is that we go from 3,500 to 5,000, because here we have 2 meters between the two rows, and then each plant is a meter apart. So that makes more or less 5,000 plants. And that vertical planting is much more interesting in the, you don't have to worry like in the 1 or 2 row terraces about.
Shra, we're losing your vocal.
Sorry? You are what? Better?
Yes, better.
So there's too much rock. There's rock that is not even. Hello? Can you hear?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah. Okay. Because I heard something. Okay. So that's a little bit it. So just a little bit of landscaping too. I forgot to tell you one thing about the grapes. So one of the things that is interesting in the Douro is that we have a multitude of grapes. So Portugal is second to Italy on as a country with more grapes. We have identified 353 different native Portuguese grapes. And the Douro, the vineyard we are where we are 7. The Douro is the 5 when we started to plant by variety. So that was planted in the Douro. 1980s was always a blend of grapes or field plants, and it was not 1 or 2 or 3 or 5. It was 20, 30, sometimes more than 30 different grapes in the same plot. So I don't know. I think maybe I can tell you a little bit more about vines a little bit later, but I hope Alvaro is ready, and maybe we could.
So, but I will show you the stone lagers where we did wines till 2010. What does mean is only a thing from the past. Maybe will be something on the future again, because but it works. Like, but you open now vintage 92, 78, 63, whatever. They were made like this, but open tanks, lagar, but again, the relation, but you don't feel lagar till here, but like 3/4 of volume, more or less, and then, but immediately you have more skin, the surface with the juice, and then but the foot stomping that is really gentle allows you to explore all the power of the grapes. But they are not abandoned, but they are here. Maybe on the future we'll make something here again, some fantasy wine or remember the past. But by now, but we also do some red wines. But here is as a good natural cooling atmosphere. So, but we age our red wines here. Still vineyard by vineyard, varietal by varietal, and then we blend or not depending on the label we will bottle. But we tend to not buy new barrels often. Only these two are our youngest new barrels. All the others, but we prefer but barrels 5, 6, 10, 12 years sometimes. But we don't like to, but barrels is the only way to increase flavors, and that's a thing that's in the collagen, a little bit of aging capacity as well. But at the same time, but we want to keep the DNA of the wine and not overwood the wines. but also some bottles. But space is always a handicap, but also technically is a good place for aging red wines. Port wines, but is a little bit different. We'll see. Just 1 minute far away from here, and but an port wine. But immediately you have on time is an important word. Time, patience. On fermentations, 3 to 5 days. Aging can be decades. But we can take more. I don't know. I could be here 7 hours talking, and still much things to say. But you must sit here. But there's mainly one word to keep in here. It's all about oxygen. But I don't know if you are updated to port wine families, port wine styles, but red wines, red grapes, sorry, you can make rubies, you can make tawny. On vinification, but they all born as a ruby color, all the primary character of the grapes. So if you want to maintain that character, you will avoid oxygen presence during aging in tunnel, or even bigger than this, balseiros, where but you have less surface between outside and inside, so but less milligrams of oxygen per year, and you will bottle younger, couple of years to 4 or 5 years maximum. Rubies, tawnies, for instance, but you will age in small barrels, small casks, sorry, pipas, and traditionally we call pipas. But 550 liters is like official measure scale. So even this shape was more wide, more thinner wood, so more oxygen and longer time. And then but different townies, 7, 10, 20, 30, 40, or even older, the oxygen will, but you lose the character of the grape, you lose the character of the year, but you have all the richness of oxidation, all the I don't know, Zoom doesn't have yet, we cannot share flavors, but believe me, it's a fantastic family. But actually, but we will make or simulate a blend of a tawny, but you have infinitive combinations, but in port wine, but there's only 3 categories that you cannot blend years, but LBV and vintage on the ruby family and collated tawny. Otherwise, but you have freedom to blend different years, different harvests, different varietals, different vineyards. So we'll make a blend of but some seconds, but we took hours to get the fine tuning on the blend. So we made a selection of organic tawnies between 6 to 9 years old, and but will be available soon. We'll bottle maybe next week, and I will show you how we did get there. But most of the port wines are infinitive wines, infinitive blends. They are never-ending wines. So I don't know.
Albert.
See?
Okay, we're just going to interrupt for a second just to give you a very, very short comment here on one thing.
Okay.
So between where we were and we're going down to the winery to be with Albert. So just stop to look at this vineyard there. You see that little white house? So that's one of the oldest vineyards we grow here at Infantado. We can't really go there, but I think you can see. So it's one of those really big blends of grapes. So we have more than 20 different grapes there. And that's a very important vineyard because there's 2 things that come out of there depending on the year. And we've changed a little bit. I mean, I think it happens with everybody. I think that no matter what the business, but in wine, I'm pretty sure it happens to everybody. So you learn, and we used to make red wine from there, and then now we only make red wine when the vintage is fresher, because when we have a hot vintage, which is mostly the norm in the door, it has too much alcohol, and so for white, for a dry red, it's too alcoholic. But so either the Infantado Reserva or Infantado Vintage come from that vineyard. And this is all I wanted to interrupt Albert. So back to you, Albert, and I'll see you in a minute. Thank you, Carl, for making this possible.
So among so much possibilities, we concentrate the blend on these 6 casks. These 2 are, let's say we should like the skeleton of the wine, but 2 pipas, 550 liters. Let's do things simple, but 55. But same wine, but different barrels, and but it's fantastic because sometimes even the same wine in different barrels, really old barrels, around 100 years old. Tiny differences between them, but they are fantastic. But this is a younger tawny, but by the color, I don't know, see the light, but still in transition. It's a Karubi transiting in a tawny. It's a 5 years old wine, but really rich in the dry plums, dry cherries. That is also important, but we will not add too much of this wine because tawnies are really permeable on the blend. But in the rubies, if you add 5% from a ruby to the other, but you don't know so much difference. But in tawny, sometimes 5% is enough to change all the character. But this pipa is a 2013 wine, fantastic. It's really exotic. Really, we have really amazing complexity. So all barrel, but 550 liters. On the blend. But this barrel we add is very important on the harvest. Also, we do even drier wines than the normal because it's a really important tool for tension, freshness, and vibration on the blend. So, but all barrel as well. And let's say a really old, our oldest organic tawny. For more richness and complexity, but only half barrel.
Alvaro, I'd like to ask you a question about this.
Sure.
How much of the decision on the blending is determined by the quantity of each of those parcels that you have there? Is there anything that is involved with that? I mean, would you blend in something that you have more quantity of just simply because you have more quantity of it, or not?
It's not an easy answer to I give you, but it's important to maintain. But what we are doing or redoing is our organic tawny. But for one side, it's important to keep the consistency. But in the organics, we do blend by blend. We don't we do multiplication of blends. It's a single blend. But when you do a blend, you must think in many things. But last harvest or the next harvest, 2020, we are looking forward. But we are planning to make wines to be bottled or blending and bottled 10, 20, 30 years from now. So you must do on the harvests like all to the next present, next future, and the really long future. And also, but this wine was not stay there like alone 7 years, but we do sometimes blending some bases for planning the future as well. It's really in the track but not losing Infantado style. Now we want our wines taste Infantado, so it's important to maintain the basis and but yes, quantity and also it's important to keep in mind.
Thank you.
So it's fun. I'm back. It's fun to think of in a certain way. You remember the blend of grapes, and now you have a blend of. So it's interesting how important. Of course, in dry wine also you're blending barrels, and to a certain degree, each barrel makes a little bit of a different wine. But that's much more marked in port. And sometimes forget the casks or the pipa and now you have a little bit more difficult to to realize, because the wine stays there a much shorter period, because there's not oxygenation, but still making wine in a certain tunnel, always the tunnel always gives a little bit of its character to the wine. So it's very different, as I was listening when I was driving here, as Álvaro was saying. So port is a different thing than wine, and of course stone is even more different than ruby, but even rubies have its thing. So
João, if you're João, if you're going to continue talking,
this is something that
hang on a second.
Probably, I mean, fuck, man, it's such a bad timing for all of us, and so everything is stopped. I mean, of course, port keeps aging in the people and in Indonesia, but this is the next whatever we're going to ship to you in the next. I hope over the next months will be this wine that I were just blended. So basically, I think we're going to move to the table.
Okay, João, if you're going to talk, you should put in Álvaro's headphones. You should take his headphones.
Alguém fez uma pergunta. O que é que meteste? O que estás a fazer? Estou da direita. Estou da direita. Por que isso me interessa?
Hello?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So, before going to the table, I think I'm going to just, I'm just going to show you, because I'm not sure, I mean, we should be better at communicating than we are, and blah, blah, blah. And so I don't know how many of you have seen. So our classic labels, we started with the organic. So this used to be the green label Reserva. Now it's not green and it's Ruby Reserva. So we started with the organics, and now you can see here what was the LBV and how the LBV is now. So we are going back, and this is, Gustavo is holding the camera, so I hope at some point he will turn it to himself. But this is, so Gustavo has been changing our labels for a few years now. And the idea is that we're going to retain some of our older style. This was a little bit what we used to be. Then we went to modern, and now we're going back to something in between. And so we've changed. The LBV 15 is already the new style. And also, I hope you'll buy some of this in the future. So the new, you were having the vintage 15, and now we are on the 16 and 17. 16 is also very important. We've put here my grandfather's and Álvaro's great-grandfather signature, João Lopes Roseira, and the 200 years. So this is a celebration wine for us. Álvaro, branco e a sopa. So, and 17 is, so it's interesting. It had never happened before in the port that, falta uma colher, 2 consecutive great classic vintage in a row. So we have 16 and 17, and now apparently 18 too. And it's interesting. And so the same thing has happened with the Tonys. So the 10-year-old used to be like this, and now it's like this. The 20-year-old is not yet. And also the Colheita used to be something like that, and now it's this. So one thing, now we're moving to the table.
João, one thing, we have about 5 minutes left.
Yes,
and so
I'm going to speed up.
Okay.
I'm going to speed up. So some of you have been here, and you know, one of the issues with port is that people sometimes think you can only have port with cheese and dessert. So normally we start a meal with port, showing you that, trying to show you that it can be differently. So what we have here, Gustavo, is a melon soup. So it's really one of the most easiest things you can do in kitchen, because you just need to take the seeds out of the melon, put that in a blender, and of course this is going to be a repetition. You're going to see almost everything has to have olive oil. So olive oil and a little bit of mint, and we have here the white port. So it's a summer soup that is a very good start to a meal, and it goes very well with white port. Ali, sorry, we forgot to show you. This is, I mean, we only sold our olive oil once to Andrew Tarlow at Diner and Marlowe and Sons. It's for us, olive oil is also very interesting because it's a little bit like an old field blend. We also have very old trees, 200 years and more, and it's also a blend of varieties. And this is the dry white port. So we are speeding up, so I don't have time to eat this, sorry. But just to show you how good it is, I can make a big smile. Delicious. And we are moving, I think, headphone, não sei o que.
Onde é que caiu primeiro para não cair ao chão? Você tem que ir para dentro, para passar?
Just to make it simple. Sorry, little technical problem. So from the talher. You're listening, right? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, sorry. So when I was thinking of pairing wine and food, we should we make American food or Portuguese food? What makes sense? So melon there is everywhere, olive oil and mint there is everywhere, but bacalhau, I think, I mean, I don't know if how much this pandemic thing is going to change our world, but we were getting used to have everything from everywhere, and being so rich, and so anything we wanted could happen. So anyway, in parts of the US, you have Portuguese communities. Could it be Providence or Newark or San Jose? So codfish, I don't think will be so hard to find. And what we have here is codfish with garbanzo, which is a very interesting combination with a little bit of a boiled, softly boiled egg. And this is, you know, it's interesting how things change through the years. We used to think in Portugal there was only one fish that you could have. This is long before sophistication. There was only one fish that you could have with red wine, and that was bacalhau. And now we are saying a little bit the opposite. You need a white wine for bacalhau because of the. I mean, I was thinking I would have more time, and I had some photos of me cooking this, so I would show you from the piece of the bacalhau. What we call it lasca in Portuguese, which is the bacalhau kind of as layers that you have a little bit of gelatin between these layers, and it's the problem with the red wine. It's a little bit like the same thing with the cheeses. When you have, we used to think you save your best red wine for cheese. Now we know that the proteins in the milk with the tannins in the red wine make a little bit of metallic, and so it's a little bit the same thing we are saying now to the gelatin in the bacalhau and the red wine. So that's why we opened the organic, which is our wine, our lighter red, and that we've tried this many times, and we think goes really well with it goes really well with the bacalhau. So bacalhau and organic 15. And we have 2 minutes. I'm gonna have to say this is really excellent.
João, one of the questions is
Go on.
Can you explain a little bit about how you procure the fortifying spirit, the distillate, for doing the fortification, and what you went through to get an organic spirit to be able to do the organics?
So one thing, it's a question that happens that we have, that people ask us a lot of times, is, can you make your own brandy? We cannot make our own. I mean, it's not that it's totally impossible, but it would be bureaucratically impossible and too expensive for the quantity of wine brandy that we need, and so that we would use. Any wine brandy that is used in port, so it's wine brandy is like a young cognac, so it's wine that was distilled into wine brandy. So it's not Marc or Grappa, it's wine brandy, it's cognac, and whatever you want to use in port, the Port Wine Institute has to have analyzed and also tasted, and it has to be approved by them. So every time, and we are starting, I mean, of course, this is a very, very weird year, and the vintage here, the harvest in the Douro is promised to be very complicated. So we don't make the amount of port we want. We are authorized to do a certain quantity according to the quality of your vineyard and the surface of vineyards that you have. And way before the revolution, we became a democracy. So the way to control that was the wine brandy. You could only buy the wine brandy that would allow you to make that quantity of port that you were entitled to. Of course, things now are different. If you want to buy more wine brandy and stock it, you can, but you still can only use a certain quantity. And so it's controlled by the Port Wine Institute. And for many years, there was nobody distilling organic wine into what could be called an organic wine brandy. And so it was impossible to make organic wine, organic port, sorry, because there was no organic wine brandy. Today, there is a number of people doing it, mostly from France. And so we can, I don't know if this was your question, Kevin, but now it's possible to buy organic wine brandy.
Yes, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. So of course, having said what I said before, now we are in the classic. So cheese and port. So we have the two vintages. Of course, this also raises a little bit of a question, especially with so the cheeses here. We really went to a little bit of an international selection. So you have. I wish Jean-Paul was listening. So I went with Jean-Paul last time I was in France, before all this happened, and so we were planning things for April and May. I bought some Vieux Comté. Gustavo was just celebrating his 30th birthday a few days ago, and so I brought this Comté especially for that. And then we have a Portuguese from the Açores. It's an aged São Jorge and Roquefort. So especially with the Roquefort, when the blue cheeses were really great with vintage, was in a time when people were drinking vintage that were older. So we fall a little bit in a younger vintage very often into that same problem that I mentioned before, tannins and the protein in the milk and so on. But I think this is me just being very proud, and probably stupid and proud, but we do think that our vintages are much more balanced. Also, the fact that we have less sugar make them a little bit different, and so we are normally very happy to have the vintage with the blue cheeses. So Stilton, of course, is the classic, but Roquefort also works very well. So I guess we have 1 minute, and I'm not really going to eat cheese, sorry. I'm just gonna drink the vintage and go straight for the dessert. So we are probably, it's not stupid to say that that today in food, in everything, but food is, so less is more. And so what we have here, I don't know if Gustav can show a little bit of a close-up of this. So it's really interesting, and again, it's a little bit like the melon and the melon and mint soup. So it's basically, it's orange with olive oil. We are a little bit of I don't know, we are a little bit left in terms of politics, which is a little bit stupid to say to Americans, but it's true. And we are always a little bit touched by things that have a social aspect. So this orange is very interesting because the Douro Valley, that is basically our province, has two names: Trás-os-Montes and Alto Douro. So the Trás-os-Montes part of this name is poor people from soils where you can grow potatoes and you have cows. And the Alto Douro, you grow grapes and people were much richer. And so for the harvest, the people from the poor part of this province would come to the Douro. It's a little bit like us Portuguese going to pick apricots in Switzerland, or going to, like Paula, my wife, went to Beaujolais to harvest in the early 1970s. So it's a poor people going to a richer place to make a little bit of money. So that thing happened in the same. It's like the province was two countries. So people from the poor part of the province would come to the Douro, and they wanted to have something of their land in the rich man table. So the rich part of this dish is the orange, because here in the Douro, orange is a little bit like in Algarve or in California, grow fantastic oranges, and they would bring their olive oil from the poor country, and they would mix it with the orange. And so that was the way that they could have something from the poor man's side of the province in the rich man's table. And so it's a very iconic thing. And this is the part where less is more. It's a fantastic dessert for Tony's. So we have orange, we have a little bit of salt and olive oil. We had some sage. We like a lot of aromatics, and so sage, orange, olive oil, salt, and we'll probably say goodbye with the Quinta 2010. For us, it's also a little bit of iconic wine. It's the first time we have an organic port from a single year, and so I don't know. Maybe I kiss you goodbye with this Tony, and I'm gonna say the Portuguese name for this: laranja azeitada. Thank you so much.
João, thank you so much. Kisses back to you. It's been great to be able to see you and visit with you across this. And
please,
Alvaro, of course, Alvaro as
and
well.
please, Alvaro, Gustav, turn to yourself for a second, please. Kevin, ask him to turn to himself.
Ask him to what?
To turn the camera to him so you can see him too. Okay,
oh,
thank
to
you.
Gustavo, yes, the cameraman. Gustavo,
Thank you.
Alvaro, João, thank you so much. It's been great to see you. We can't wait to see you again. It will be soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.